Have you ever wondered why, amid daily struggles, you feel an inner voice telling you that there is something greater in store for you? A sense that, despite the challenges, there is a higher purpose guiding your steps? If you've ever felt this, know that you are one of God's chosen. And as one of the chosen, something extraordinary is prepared for you. God's favor. Oh, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications to stay updated. First of all, it is important to understand what God's favor is. When we talk about favor, many people imagine it as some kind of luck or chance that benefits certain people. But God's favor goes far beyond that. It is God's grace and goodness poured out abundantly upon us. It is the divine hand moving toward us, bringing provision, protection, and often performing the impossible. God's favor is not an abstract idea or something reserved for only a few people. It is a living reality, available to those who trust in God's plan and surrender in faith to the purpose He has for their lives. When we speak about God's favor, we are talking about something that goes beyond what we can see or measure. It is not just about receiving material blessings. It is about experiencing a deep connection with the Creator, feeling that He is present, guiding your steps, opening doors, and blessing you in ways you could never imagine. If you are reading this, know that you have been chosen to live in this favor. Whatever is happening around you right now, whether it's a difficulty, a challenge, or uncertainty, God has a greater plan for you. He is working in your favor, even if you can't see it yet. The first step is to recognize this favor and accept that it is present, ready to manifest powerfully in your life. Many people go through life without realizing that they have been chosen. They look at their circumstances and wonder why they face so many challenges, or why it seems like God's favor is far away. But the fact that you are facing difficulties does not mean that God's favor is absent from your life. In fact, often, it is in the most difficult moments that God's favor reveals itself most clearly. God uses these moments to shape you, strengthen your faith, and prepare you for something greater. God's favor is a gift, but to live it fully, you must recognize that it is already at your disposal. Often we are so focused on our worries and the problems of everyday life that we do not notice the small blessings around us. God's favor is not only manifested in great moments of victory, but also in the simple things and small achievements of daily life. When we face problems, it is important to remember that we are not alone. God is by our side every step of the way, even when we cannot see it. Difficulties can be like teachers, teaching us valuable lessons that help us grow. It may be a new skill you develop, a friendship that strengthens, or an unexpected opportunity that arises. Instead of focusing only on what is going wrong, try to find something positive in each situation. It could be a small act of kindness, helpful advice from someone close, or simply the fact that you made it through another day. These small things are signs that God is working in your life. Perhaps you are waiting for a big change in your life, for an answer from God to a specific situation, and that answer has not yet arrived. It could be a new job, a door you've been waiting to open, or a change in your family or circle of friends. What you need to know is that even while you wait, God's favor is active. He is preparing the way, aligning circumstances, and guiding you toward the best. What seems like a delay or an obstacle now may actually be part of the bigger plan God has for you. Throughout the Bible, we have numerous examples of men and women who lived God's favor in their lives. Think of Noah, who, in a corrupt and violent world, was chosen to be saved along with his family and the animals, while the rest of humanity perished. He was not saved by his own merit, but because he found grace, favor, in the eyes of the Lord. Or think of Mary, a simple young woman from Nazareth, who was called highly favored by the angel Gabriel and chosen to be the mother of Jesus. These biblical examples show us that God's favor does not depend on our social status, wealth, or rank, but rather on our willingness to trust and obey Him. Let me share something personal. There was a time in my life when I was completely lost. I had lost my job and found myself in a period of great uncertainty. Doubts began to take over me, and I wondered, what is my next step? Where do I go now? The feeling of failure and uncertainty about the future was suffocating. It was then that I decided to put everything in God's hands. At that moment, I began to pray, seeking direction. I knew that as one of God's chosen, He had a bigger plan for me, even if I couldn't see it yet. It was during this period of searching that I felt an unexpected call to start creating content on YouTube. At first glance, this seemed completely outside of what I had planned for my life. I had never considered YouTube as part of my purpose, but God was guiding me towards something new. Over time, I realized that this platform would be a powerful way to impact other people. What seemed like a simple entertainment activity turned into a mission. God used this opportunity to open doors and show me that, through creating content, I could touch lives and share messages of faith and hope. What seemed like a period of loss turned into a moment of purpose revelation. This was God's favor at work in my life, turning a situation of uncertainty into an opportunity to serve others. One of the greatest difficulties we face when seeking God's favor is not recognizing it when it is already present. How many times do we focus so much on problems and limitations that we fail to see the blessings around us? You may be living in God's favor right now and not realize it because your attention is focused on difficulties. Allow me to tell another story. I remember a friend who complained about his job for years. He thought he deserved a better job, with a higher salary and more recognition. However, he didn't realize that, in that job, he had something very valuable: flexible hours, an understanding boss, and the opportunity to learn and grow in areas that would be essential for his future career. Often, God's favor does not manifest the way we expect. We may be waiting for something grand and immediate, while He is blessing us in more subtle but equally powerful ways. Psalm reminds us, "For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will He withhold from those who walk uprightly." This shows us that God's favor is not reserved only for the dramatic and extraordinary moments of life, but also in the small things of everyday life. Think about the times you were spared from an accident, when an unexpected opportunity arose, or when a difficult situation was resolved in a way you could never have imagined. This is God's favor. A personal example that always reminds me of God's favor was a trip I took with my family to the countryside. On the road, the car started showing signs that something was wrong. It was a little traveled highway, with no gas stations nearby, and it was getting dark. My worries increased when the engine began to fail, and I feared the worst. However, just ahead, we spotted a small repair shop, practically in the middle of nowhere. The mechanic quickly identified the problem and was able to make a temporary repair so we could safely reach our destination. It might just be a coincidence, but I see it as God's favor, manifesting at the exact moment we needed it. And that is what God's favor does. It takes what seems like the end and turns it into a new beginning. He opens doors in places you never imagined and gives you purpose where there was once only doubt. If you are in a moment of uncertainty, know that God has something reserved for you too. God's favor may manifest in unexpected ways, turning what seems like a challenge into an opportunity for growth and transformation. Waiting can be one of the most challenging things for us. We want quick answers, immediate solutions, and when they don't come, we begin to doubt. But God's favor does not operate on human time. It works on divine time. God's timing is perfect, and often the wait is part of His plan, because it is in waiting that we are transformed, that we learn to trust more deeply, and that we prepare for what is to come. Think for a moment about how many times in your life you've had to wait. Perhaps it was for a job, an opportunity, or even a relationship. During that time, it may have seemed like nothing was happening. But God was working behind the scenes, aligning everything so that, at the right moment, His favor would be fully revealed in your life. God's favor also reveals itself in the process, not just in the final outcome, but in the transformation He works within you while you wait. Perhaps at this moment, you are waiting for something that seems to be taking longer than expected. Know that God is using this time to prepare you, strengthen you, and equip you for what He has in store for you. While you wait, it is essential to live with expectation. Expectation is a form of faith. It is believing that, even though you can't see it, God is working, taking care of every detail, and preparing the perfect stage for His favor to be revealed in your life. Don't see the wait as an interruption, but as part of the journey. To walk in God's favor, two things are fundamental: faith and obedience. Faith is the certainty that, even without seeing, God is acting. It is the unshakable confidence that, regardless of the current circumstances, God is in control and has already prepared something extraordinary for you. While you wait, it is essential to live with expectation. Expectation is a form of faith. It is believing that, even though you can't see it, God is working, taking care of every detail, and preparing the perfect stage for His favor to be revealed in your life. Don't see the wait as an interruption, but as part of the journey. To walk in God's favor, two things are fundamental: faith and obedience. Faith is the certainty that, even without seeing, God is acting. It is the unshakable confidence that, regardless of the current circumstances, God is in control and has already prepared something extraordinary for you. Faith is not just believing in God, but believing that He is good, that He has the best for you, and that His promises will be fulfilled. When you decide to live by faith, you begin to see the world differently. Situations that once seemed like insurmountable barriers become opportunities for God's favor to manifest. Faith allows you to see beyond what natural eyes see and trust that God is working for you, even when everything around you seems contrary. Now that we understand what God's favor is and how it can manifest in our lives, the question arises: how can we receive this favor? How can we live so that God's favor constantly flows toward us? The answer lies in faith. Hebrews says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because whoever comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him." Faith is not just believing in God. It is believing that He desires the best for us, that He wants to bless and guide us. Receiving God's favor requires active trust, an unshakable certainty that He is with us and that His promises are true. But this faith cannot be passive. It is not just a matter of believing that God's favor exists. It is living according to that belief. When you walk with the confidence that God is working in your life, you begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin to move toward God's favor instead of waiting for it to come to you. A practical example of this happened to me when I decided to start my own business. After years of working for other companies, I felt in my heart that it was time to start something of my own. But the fear and uncertainty were great. Like many, I had bills to pay and responsibilities to meet, and the idea of leaving a stable job seemed too risky. However, after much prayer and seeking divine guidance, I decided to take the step of faith. It wasn't easy at first. There were moments of doubt, moments when things didn't seem to be going as expected. But it was in this process that I saw God's favor manifest. Partnerships arose unexpectedly. Clients came through recommendations I hadn't anticipated, and little by little the business prospered. This experience taught me that God's favor doesn't exempt us from challenges, but gives us the strength and provision needed to overcome them. Obedience, in turn, is the action that puts that faith into motion. Obeying God means following the direction He gives you, even when it doesn't make sense to human eyes. Sometimes, God may ask you to take a step of faith, to change something in your life, to leave something behind, or to open yourself up to something new. He may call you to serve in a different way, to extend a hand to someone you don't even know, or to change your plans. When you obey God, even without fully understanding why, you are positioning yourself to live in the center of His favor. Each act of obedience brings us closer to God and aligns us with His plan. Sometimes God's favor is about to manifest, but He waits for you to take the first step of faith and obedience. That step may seem risky, but it is precisely in it that you experience the provision, protection, and blessings that God has for you. One of the great truths about God's favor is that it is already present in your life, even if you haven't fully recognized it yet. How many times have you been protected from a situation without realizing it? How many opportunities have arisen unexpectedly? That is God's favor working silently, preparing the way for you. You may be so focused on difficulties or situations that haven't gone as planned that you haven't noticed the blessings already around you. God's favor doesn't always manifest in a spectacular and grandiose way. Sometimes, it is in the small details of daily life. It is in the way He takes care of you, in the relationships He helps you build, in the opportunities that arise, and even in the doors He closes because they weren't for your good. Begin to pay more attention to what God is already doing for you. God's favor becomes visible when you start looking with spiritual eyes, with an open heart, and a mind free from the worries of the world. You will realize that often He is working behind the scenes, putting all the pieces in the right place at the right time. What seems like a moment of silence or inactivity is actually God preparing something much greater for you. To experience God's favor in abundant and constant ways, it is essential to develop an attitude marked by humility and gratitude, two fundamental virtues for connecting more deeply with divine action in our lives. Humility is the acknowledgement that everything we have, everything we are, and every achievement we gain comes from God. Without Him, our very existence would be devoid of purpose and direction. Through humility, we are reminded of our complete dependence on Him, and this opens the way for divine blessings to flow even more powerfully and continuously in our lives. Humility is not just about submitting to a higher power, but understanding that every talent, skill, or success we experience is a gift. The false illusion of self-sufficiency can lead us away from the true purpose of our existence. When we adopt humility as a way of life, we become open channels for God to continue using us as instruments of His will. He wants to work through us, and humility is the key that allows this collaboration. When we recognize that we are vessels in God's hands, He can fill us with His blessings and guide our steps. Besides humility, gratitude is also essential for attracting divine favor. Being grateful is more than simply thanking God for big achievements. It's about recognizing His presence in the everyday details. A truly grateful heart sees God's hand in every small victory, in every breath, in every opportunity that arises. When we choose to live with gratitude, even in the face of adversity, our perception of God's blessings expands. We begin to see the countless ways He has already cared for us and the innumerable signs of His provision. It's easy to get lost in the endless pursuit of what we don't yet have, failing to realize how much we have already been blessed. However, when we adopt gratitude as a constant practice, we shift our focus to the gifts we've already received. This change in perspective completely transforms how we see the world. Instead of falling into the trap of complaining about what we haven't achieved, we start celebrating what has already been given to us. This creates a virtuous cycle in which recognizing past blessings paves the way for new manifestations of God's favor. Gratitude, therefore, is not just a passive response to what we've already received, but an act of faith. When we thank God for what we already have, we are demonstrating trust in His plan for our lives. This act of faith opens doors for even more favor to be poured out upon us. Gratitude creates an environment conducive to divine action, a space where faith is strengthened and God's favor can flow even more abundantly. It puts us in a position of positive expectation, where we are constantly prepared to receive more of His blessings. If there is one word that should define our journey as servants of God, that word is expectation. Living with expectation means trusting unwaveringly that God is always working in our favor, even when we cannot perceive or understand His actions. In times of challenge, this expectation gives us the certainty that, regardless of the circumstances, God remains in control. Having this conviction allows us to weather storms with the inner peace of knowing that each new day is a new opportunity for God's favor to manifest. It is important to understand that the expectation of God's favor does not imply that our lives will be free of difficulties. On the contrary, it means that even in adversity, we can trust that everything is being orchestrated for our good. The promise of divine favor is not a guarantee of ease, but rather that, amid trials, we will have God's support and guidance. When we live with this expectation, we are not shaken by the uncertainties of the future, because we know that every challenge is an opportunity to experience God's care and favor in new and surprising ways. The expectation that God is always working in our favor also leads us to live more proactively and boldly. When we believe that He has great things in store for us, we are encouraged to act with confidence, even in situations that, at first glance, may seem unfavorable. This expectation drives us to make courageous decisions, knowing that with God by our side, we can face any challenge and emerge victorious. Furthermore, positive expectation helps us maintain a spirit of perseverance. We know that even when answers seem delayed or situations seem stagnant, God is in control, preparing the stage for His favor to manifest at the right time. This confidence allows us to wait patiently without losing hope, because we know that God's timing is perfect. He knows exactly the right moment to act, and when the manifestation of His blessings will be most meaningful in our lives. One of the great secrets to experiencing God's favor is aligning our hearts and expectations with His will. As we grow in humility and gratitude, we also begin to trust more fully in God's plans, knowing that He always desires the best for us. When we live in this way, we create space for God's favor to manifest in supernatural ways. He wants to bless us, but it is up to us to be prepared to receive those blessings. This preparation is not passive. It requires us to be attentive to God's directions, willing to follow His path, even when that path seems challenging. Sometimes God's favor manifests through opportunities that initially seem difficult or out of our reach, but when we are aligned with His will, we can recognize those opportunities as blessings in disguise. Moreover, when we live with humility, gratitude, and expectation, our attitude toward life is transformed. We are no longer governed by fear or anxiety, because we know that we are in the hands of a loving and sovereign God. This trust gives us the strength to face any situation with courage and determination, knowing that no matter what happens, God's favor is working in our favor. God's favor is not something you have to wait for passively. You can live with the expectation that He is already at work, that He is already moving circumstances and aligning everything for His plan to be fulfilled. When you live this way, you create a spiritual environment where God's favor flows naturally and constantly. Although God's favor brings many blessings, it can also come with challenges. Often, God's favor can attract opposition. This happens because the enemy knows the power that divine favor has to transform lives, and he will do everything to keep us away from these blessings. However, it is important to remember that, even amid challenges, God's favor continues to operate in our lives. Isaiah 54:17 assures us that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. This means that, regardless of the circumstances, God's favor will protect us, sustain us, and give us victory. I remember a time when I was experiencing great professional progress. However, during that same period, I faced a series of criticisms and opponents. Instead of letting it get me down, I trusted that God's favor would continue to operate, and that's exactly what happened. The obstacles were overcome, and the blessings kept flowing, proving that God's favor is stronger than any opposition. One of the most beautiful things about God's favor is that it not only blesses you, but also blesses the people around you. When you live in God's favor, your life becomes a channel of blessings. What you receive is not just for you, but so that you can share with others. God's favor is not selfish. It is generous and abundant. And when you live it, it is reflected in your actions, in your words, and in the way you impact those around you. You may not realize the impact you are having right now, but God uses the favor in your life to touch other people. Your faith, your courage, your determination, and your generosity are instruments that God uses to transform the environment around you. When you share the blessings you receive, you are multiplying God's favor and allowing it to reach even more people. You have been chosen. God has something extraordinary in store for you, and His favor is already active in your life. Whatever you are facing now, know that God's favor is working behind the scenes. He is preparing you, strengthening you, and equipping you to live out the greater purpose He has for you. Live with faith, live with obedience, live with humility and gratitude. Embrace God's favor in its fullness, and let Him guide every step of your way. When you do this, you begin to live a life of purpose, peace, and blessings beyond what you could imagine. Jesus told us in Matthew, "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden." God's favor in our lives is that light, shining for all to see. When we live in His favor, we have the opportunity to impact the world around us in ways we never imagined. May this text serve as a reminder and a call to open your spiritual eyes and see God's favor operating in your life, even in the small things. God has great plans for you. He desires to bless you beyond what you can imagine and use you as an instrument to bless others. God's favor is already yours. Now it is up to you to live this reality and experience the fullness of the promises He has for you.